Hey everyone, Irene Line here. Welcome to this video, to this channel, and to this entire world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. Today I have a chat to share with you with one of my friends and students, Donnie Hill. We actually did a round one 2 years ago, and I'll post that below. That was more of a personal share experience. And today in this video, we talk about his journey going through my programs and learnings through the 21-day nervous system tune-up and Smart Body, Smart Mind. He has done those since that first conversation that we had. And we talk about not only his personal healing journey, but how he is implementing and integrating this work into his career, into his work with other individuals. He is a coach in the leadership world, and I'm just thrilled to share this conversation because he shows how this nervous system work, the education, and even really basic things can get blended into all sorts of things. This isn't just for healing chronic illnesses and obviously improving our health and well-being. That is absolutely true. And our nervous system is with us when we are doing everything we do, as well as business and career. So have a watch, have a listen. And the other thing I will mention is if you are watching this in the early months of 2022, we will be opening up registration for Smart Body, Smart Mind very soon on February 21st. It will stay open for 2 weeks until March 6th, and then we will run our program that we run once a year, Smart Body, Smart Mind. We only open up enrollment in this time of the year. So if you are interested in learning more about this and just getting to know the program in general, we'll post the link to that below as well. Of course, all of this is on my website as always. And then finally, if you would like to learn more about Donnie and maybe work with him, his website is also below somewhere near this video. Enjoy our chat, and we will see you next time. Welcome, my friend. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. I always love our conversations.
I know. We were friends before this more kind of student mentor relationship.
Yeah,
So it's fun to just keep connecting in these ways. We had a chat for my channel almost 2 years ago now.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
pop that below. That was a bit more just general and more global. And today I wanted to talk and get you on record, so to speak, very formal, around your experiences with Smart Body, Smart Mind, the nervous system work, and also how it's integrating into your work. That's really what I want to focus on, Donnie. But tell our listeners, our viewers, how you got sparked into this work, this nervous system work. I want to hear your side of the story.
Yeah. So similar to you, I was an athlete. I was a pole vaulter in college, and was accustomed to training for 20 plus hours and competing. And in college, I had surgery on both of my knees. So was in physical therapy a lot. I was also a gymnast.
You have a
So
very similar story.
all of the pain and everything on my joints. And then after I graduated, I was working as an actor, but I was also a certified personal trainer for a while. And so I just really loved working with the body. And in doing that, I realized just how disconnected I had gotten from my body.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until I was diagnosed with my voice disorder where I was like, you know what? Something isn't working. And so I was going and working with a bunch of voice coaches, speech language pathologists, ENTs, and it just progressively got worse. So the way that they found a solution for my voice was for me to get Botox into my vocal cords to help relax the muscles.
Wow.
And so I was doing that for about 5 years, but each of the injections were really inconsistent. And it was just kind of like sometimes it would last 3 months, sometimes it would last 9 months, sometimes it might only last a couple of weeks. And I really had to figure out, all right, if they don't figure out anything with my voice, then I need to find another holistic route.
Yeah.
And that's really when I got into kind of the spirituality, holistic work and looking at my life and all of the different events. So fast forward to, I think we met in 2014 or 2015.
It was around those, it was like the maybe 2013 even.
Yeah, sometime around there.
Yeah, it was before any of my online courses were created.
Yeah, so it had to be around that time.
Well, yeah.
We were at this business conference, and you were talking about your work, and I was like, I don't know what this is, and I don't completely understand it, but because of my background as a personal trainer and my interest in the body, there was something about it that just intuitively hooked in. It was like, yes, let's learn more about that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So I ended up just kind of following you and lurking and listening to some of your videos here and there. But I never dove into the work. And then I guess now 2 years ago in 2020 is really where I was like, okay, I need to take care of myself. Like the mindset work isn't working anymore. I'm dealing with more kind of my emotional ups and downs. So there's something deeper here that I think I need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so I think the first couple of videos I watched or the healing trauma series and your adrenal fatigue. And I'm like, this is it. I just need to dive in and do this, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
And so as I started listening to you and getting some of the basic education on board, I just started noticing these little changes, just both in how I was able to be with my emotions and also like how my body felt. So I felt there would be these moments of relief, and it's like, okay, let me just lean into that a little bit more. All that to say, I didn't exactly know what I was getting myself into when I said yes to doing this work.
Nobody be scared. Nobody be scared.
No. This is a good thing. But it's kind of like once you open the door, you have to step in, and you just don't know what you're going to step into.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please, because I feel like I'm just rambling.
It's great. Hold that thought. So,
Okay.
it's so interesting because let's just say we met in 2013. Let's just say that's when it was. If I think about, there were a lot of people at that conference. You were maybe one of 5 out of the hundreds that actually did follow through. I mean, maybe other people did, but so that's interesting to me. And then the second thing is, do you think that if you had dove into this work a little sooner, I mean, my courses and programs weren't quite ready then, obviously, so that was not possible. But do you think that 4 years ago, you would have, like, your system would have been able to go through and do it to the degree that you could in the last 2 years? Am I making sense there?
Yeah. I actually don't think so.
Yeah. And I'm asking that because I think I want everybody in the world to do this work, as I know you do probably too now because of what you've experienced. And everybody has to do it in their own time.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part, I think, for now you as well as me, is if everyone could just get in now. You know, in 5 years, it'll be a totally different world, but we can't push people. So that was my curiosity with that.
Yeah. So at the time when we met was the time that I was doing cancer coaching work. So I was working really closely with patients and their families. And a lot of what I was working through with them was their anger and their rage and resentment. And part of that process for me was me learning how to be with my own and just kind of deal with all of the emotional ups and downs, and like just getting some language for the different feelings that I was moving through. But I think because it was so new for me, that had I gone into the nervous system work then, it would have almost like blew out my system.
Be too much too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I could intellectually understand it, but I couldn't somatically be with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's almost like a spell has to be put into you that's a good kind of spell that says, okay, it's time.
um,
Okay, proceed with your story. So,
yeah.
do you remember where you were at?
So we were talking about 2020 and diving into the work. And as I started to do more of it, that's when I was getting really excited, like, wow, this is making a difference for me personally. And I think we had a few interactions. I think it was right around Thanksgiving, where you're like, well, you might want to consider the 21-day program. And so I was like,
Right.
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
try it. So I
Yeah.
dove into it, and I really began to hear you talk about the science behind it. And that for me made all the difference in the world, because you talk about it in such a simple way. Like I've heard physicians talk about the nervous system. I'm like, this just sounds really complicated as they're talking about it. But then there's something that you have in your magic where you're like, well, this is what this does, and here's how it's broken down, and this is what it's responsible for. And it's like I could stay on board and continue to track my body as you were talking about it. And I think there was something in one of the intro videos that was a huge permission slip for me, where you like pause when you need to. I'm like, wait, someone is telling me that I don't need to try and push myself through this education. And that for me was, I think, where one of the big shifts happen in terms of how I go about working with myself, both in my personal life and my personal evolution and in my professional life.
Yeah.
And then towards the beginning of last year, we had another conversation, and it was like, I think I'm ready to do a SBSM.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I think you should just give it a go. And if it works for you, it works. And if not, then we can talk about it some more.
Yeah.
And so I signed up, I think the day after that conversation. And you know when you say yes to something and then like all of these pieces just kind of align that you didn't know were there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
That
kind of what
happens, eh?
happened after I said yes. It's like, okay, well, here's the path to your new healing and way of being and moving through the world.
Was there
And
something specific, Donnie, that lined up, if you can recall, that lined up? Or was it just more an energetic feeling?
it was more of an energetic feeling, but I think at that time too was right around the time I had just started working with my therapist again. And it was like, when I said yes to you, then I committed to doing therapy for a while longer.
Got it.
Because originally I told my dad, I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to do it for like 2 months just to see what happens. And then as I got into the conversation and I dove in with you, the two things just went together so nicely. I just wanted to continue to do the work together. And so I've just continued.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So what I want to ask you about personal and professional. So what have you been noticing in your physiology, your body? I mean, I've known you for a lot of years now, although we don't see each other in person. I've noticed shifts in your affect, in your voice, your ease. So those are the things I see, Mr. Hill. What are you experiencing? Aw.
Yeah. Oh my God. The list is so long.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a shift in my ease, a shift in my voice. Even though I hear it, I'm watching it change. I'm watching the quality of it change and hearing the quality of it change. So I'm really curious to see how that continues to unfold. I'm setting boundaries without like setting boundaries. If
Yeah.
that makes sense, it's kind of just like, no, I'm showing up this way, and the boundary is set. Where before it felt like, okay, I'm gonna go in and intentionally set a boundary, and then if people break it, then I have to go back and have a conversation, and I don't really have that anymore. It's just the boundary is set, the respect is there, and I just continue to move. My communication with people has changed, so it's definitely a lot more direct. And it's not rude, it's still respectful, but it's just, here's what it is. This is what's important to me. This isn't important to me. Why are we why are we going around in loops? So I'm just able to be in what I would have considered uncomfortable conversations more comfortably.
Yep.
And my level of compassion and kindness towards myself, I'm like, who is this person?
It's you.
Person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you said about boundaries and communication, those definitely, in my opinion, go hand in hand because, as you know from the course, a big part of it is learning the social engagement aspect. Not because you're going out and, engaging with people, that's not part of the coursework, but you're learning the physiology of what that is. And I always think about parents, or you have dogs, I know, like how an owner is with their dog when they're direct and clear with compassion, but clarity, they listen and they respond to the command. If we think about dogs, and with kids, it's also, they need that stern, strong boundary direction. And then, like you said, you're not having to go back and fix it. So hearing you say that about the boundaries is really cool because it's just, in my opinion, again, how we're supposed to naturally communicate with other humans.
Yeah.
So that's neat.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the other big pieces is remember watching your interview with Seth around healthy and toxic shame.
Yeah.
And the amount of toxic shame that I held in my body. And it was like just in my day-to-day interactions with myself, I'm like, no wonder I've been anxious and dealing with depression. Like, if you're constantly
How
all
did
the
you
time to
how did
yourself.
you feel that in your, like when you heard that interview with Seth on the toxic shame versus healthy shame? It's an important one for all you listening. Make sure you watch it.
Yes.
How did you feel that internally, and how are you able to pick up on that, if you can recall?
Yeah, it was when you all were talking about the example with the toddler and his grandpa, where I got glimpses of like me at 2 or 3 years old. And if I saw myself like going to do something, would I say, "Hey, stupid, get down. That's dumb." And it was just this moment of like, why have I been talking to myself in that
Tone.
way?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was in that moment where I I felt the shift of like, okay, I know I have access to that that kind of shaming. So what does healthy shaming look like for me? And now what I find, an example would be around money. Like in the past, I made poor financial decisions and used my credit card when I just should have not bought it.
Yeah.
And I would say I would have this feeling of like, ugh, God, man, that's such a disappointment. Why did I make that decision?
Yeah.
And just kind of let myself feel the discomfort of that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be, oh my God, you made the same decision over and over again. And so it's kind of little practices like that that I'm doing with myself where I'm able to catch it and say, okay, is this healthy shame or am I toxically shaming myself for this? And then learning how to just kind of self-soothe and say, all right, it's some compassion. So it was the warmth and connection piece that was the reminder of, okay, this is what the process can look like.
Right.
You go in, you acknowledge the shame, and then you come back and warmly connect and say, you know what? Well, you can do it better next time.
When you were growing up, do you recall having toxic shame from your parents? My sense is not, based on what you told me about your family system.
No, I think it was more cultural than anything. Like people ask me all the time, like, how old were you when you knew you were gay? I was like, 2?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it was, for me, it was just like part of me.
Right.
But the cultural messages was, that's not okay. So there was, you would hear it in the church or you would hear it amongst other family members. And it's like, okay, well,
something must be wrong.
I'm just gonna, shut down or guard. Right. And so I think carrying that around with me was really where kind of the toxic shame began.
It embedded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense then. Yeah. Because like I said, sounds like your mom and pa are good folk. So.
They're good folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How about business? Tell everyone what you do, what you've been doing for business, and how is it being shifted with this lens of the nervous system and the somatic pieces?
Yeah, my business really falls into to 2 categories. I have leadership development and business strategy or marketing strategy. And originally when I started, it was just kind of like your typical leadership development. Here's what influence means. Here's some things you should think about when you're interacting with people, or what does it mean to be an effective leader or a thoughtful leader. And then the business strategy was just that, how do you want to grow? What's your positioning, your presence, all of that. And I have been through probably five or 6 different business programs and spent a lot of money going through business programs. And some of them were helpful. All of them were helpful in some way. But I didn't get the results that I wanted. And part of that was on me, and part of it was that the container wasn't what I needed.
Yeah.
And as I reflected on that process, I realized, oh, there's this piece missing, because I wasn't the only one. Like, there were a lot of people who would go through and they just kind of be circling and bounce around from coach to coach. And I think when I started doing your work, like, some of the pieces started to shift for me. So, like, marketing for me became a lot easier because I had more safety on board. I was okay being more visible. And so I started to just explore, well, okay, what happens when I look at visibility, the connection between visibility and safety? Is that linked? Or when it comes to being a more effective leader and you having to share a message that feels uncomfortable and might rock the boat, where does safety play a role in that? And so as I dove deeper into Smart Body, Smart Mind and started to go through the practices, I was like, okay, well, let me try some of these somatic practices. Now let me go and apply those same practices to things that I have to do in my business. So when I have to go live,
Yeah.
okay, am I orienting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I in my head, or do I feel my bottom on the seat, or what's happening? And so I started doing these little practices when it came to being on video or when it came to sales conversations. And then after it started working, I was like, all right, I want to try it with some of the people that I do communications coaching with. And so I typically get a lot of leaders who are really intelligent, but they're quiet and on the more anxious side.
Yeah.
And so for them, they have a difficult time speaking up. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try a little bit of somatic work with the communication practice.
Yeah.
And what I ended up finding is that many of them were trying to force themselves to do work that they weren't ready to do. So I shared with them, I'm like, do you realize you're asking yourself to step into unsafe territory and you don't have any capacity there? So what happens if we slowly just build your capacity? And the analogy I now use with people is, you have a kiddie pool and a regular adult pool and then an Olympic sized pool. Like, you stepping into something new is like dumping your newborn baby into the middle of the Olympic sized pool and asking them to swim to the edge. And you just like watch their eyes
Great.
open, like, oh my God, I've been swimming and trying to survive.
Yeah.
And when I give them that example, they then can physically have this visceral response that they feel. And they're like, oh, yeah, I've just been pushing my body more and more and more. And I said, that right there, that's the survival stress that I want you to begin paying attention to. And the work ends up just shifting in an entirely new way for them, because now they're still tied to the result, but now they have the language to say, oh, I don't have the capacity right now. I have the desire, but I need to build the capacity. And so I'll tell them, well, our work together is going to be building that capacity. And then as they move through it, they're like, oh, I said what I needed to say. Like, I had a client of mine who said, normally I don't talk in meetings, but in my last meeting, I asked 3 questions. And I said, do you realize how big that is? And she said, no. I said, look, we've been working together for almost 2 years, and you were fearful of asking questions before because you thought it was going to derail the conversation. Mm-hmm. But in this one conversation, you asked 3 questions with little attachment. I'm like, that's a big deal, and that needs to be celebrated. And she just she lit up. And so I'm learning to really learning how to help people see the incremental progress.
Yes.
That they're making, and then I'll try and tie it to some nervous system language so that they get used to hearing me talk in that way, and have the kind of scientific understanding of what's happening for them too.
That makes me so happy, because so good work. And for the record, to everyone listening, Donnie has figured this out on his own. And you're not doing trauma work with these people, because that's not your scope of practice. But this is really, one of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you about this and hear your stories, because these are the first stories I've heard from your end of specifics, is that this work can be implemented into any professional strategy, professional work, school teachers, people that work at coffee shops. I mean, it's endless. It really is. But what's so interesting is that there is because I am in the same boat with you. We met at one of those business conferences, and I've been to so many of them. And I remember the last one I went to, I kind of was like, I can't do this anymore because it was just so clear, and it was sad in some ways how many people were there to obviously work on their business and make a difference. And that's awesome. I totally believe in that form of capitalism, good, hard work, helping people with things. Great. But it was so clear that I'm going to, like 90% of the people, and I'm probably being generous, were so disconnected from themselves, their bodies, were clearly still holding so much survival stress. And I say that not to say you have to be fully healed to do this work. That's not what I mean. I just mean there was no awareness of it. And so you're right, people would push themselves and then nothing would stick, or very little would stick, because the efforts of the project that they were working on or the presentation, it was all head, it was all ego, and it wasn't based in sort of foundational embodied physiology, which might not seem like a big deal, but when our brains are driven by our biology, they have to connect. And the other thing that's really popular is just this idea of pushing. It's like if you don't, and in some instances it's true. Like for people who are trying to start like an exercise regimen and you've never done it, yeah, sometimes you're going to have to push yourself to get out and sweat a bit, and you're not wanting to, but afterwards you feel good.
Yeah.
But that's different from this.
This is the piece that is that I think is the fine line when it comes to my work. So when, for instance, I was teaching the other day and was doing some nervous system education work before I dove into the sales and marketing work. And so one of the pieces that I asked one of the participants was, what's something that they're working on in their business that is kind of keeping them stuck. And he started talking about his process. Like he usually likes structure and organization and likes for it to be thorough. But when it comes to building it in his business, he didn't want to do it. So I told him, for me, when I think about that, that just is an indicator that there's some form of dysregulation there. And we can go and talk about that. And after listening to him kind of talk through the pieces of like what was uncomfortable or what wasn't working, I told him, maybe the first piece is you just writing down, here are the pieces that I need to do for this. And then you walk away, you go do something else, and then you come back when you're ready. And then the next piece is, okay, now I want to focus on the first bullet point. Let me spend 5 minutes here and go away and come back. And what I'm trying to get people to see is that there is some level of pushing that has to happen when you are creating something new or when you're forming a new habit. But you don't have to manhandle yourself. White knuckle it in order for it to just like, I gotta make it go, because it's not going to have you relate to yourself or your business in a healthy way or in an enjoyable way, and then only perpetuate the dysfunction and the dysregulation.
100%.
So when I hear people talk about, grinding and pushing, I'm having to dig into it a little bit with people to figure out, okay, what is your definition of pushing and grinding?
Yeah.
To see, does it fall more on the easing into it side, or is it more of this kind of side? And then teasing that apart depending on where they are.
That's a good distinction, because one person's definition of grinding and overriding might be very different than another person's. And this is another important thing, is that everything is so specific to the individual, and that individual also is going to change based on need, time of year, time of month for some of us.
Yeah.
You know, how well fed we are, hydrated, rested. Are there other crises occurring? Because I often find that there's a lack of nuance
Yeah.
and discernment, and very rarely is there a perfect kind of 10 commandments, if you will, for how to create something. You know, I actually quite like the 10 commandments, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. I was raised, but I read them actually about a year ago again. I was like, that's just pretty good, actually. You know, but that's like for just being a good human to other
Hmm.
people, right? But then there's
Hmm.
this checklist of this is what you have to do to build a business or take care of your health. And man, there's just so much diversity in each person, not alone between people, that you gotta respect that. What I like what you said about that example of that client where it's like, do a little bit, leave it, come back, do it bullet point. That's titration, right? So you're
Hmm.
basically bringing that concept of drop by drop, but still doing it into the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun for me because I realize one of the things I geek out on is translation work. And I think
Ooh,
about this as translation work.
how
I was like,
so?
huh. So the example around taking a titrated approach.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, let me take this biochemical concept and translate it and turn it into something practical that can be used in business.
got it.
Now, I sometimes depending on the person, if they want to just geek out with me for a bit, I'll use like the real terminology. But
Sure.
otherwise, I have to find either another word to substitute for it,
I see.
or find another way of describing it so people can understand the concept.
That's the sign of a very good teacher. Have you, when you now bring on a new client, because this might be something that others are interested in, do you tell them that this is an approach that you're using now that's different? Like, how do you front load that conversation with this? How do you bring that into that conversation?
Yeah, it's been an interesting process because I'm I'm wanting to just be really direct with people and tell
Mhm.
people this is my approach.
Yeah.
But I'm also now seeing that some people have some awareness of what somatic work is or nervous system regulation work, and some people have no sense of what somatic work is.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to gauge on how much, how do I find like language that I can use regardless of where people are on the spectrum? Because otherwise it feels like I'm reinventing the wheel in every conversation based on like what the person what the person knows. And that can be exhausting in the conversation. But I am wanting to use this as one of my differentiators because it has made a world of difference for me just as a human, but it also makes a difference for a lot of my clients because a lot of them come from really traumatizing pasts,
Oh yeah.
of all different flavors.
Hmm.
And one thing that people will always say to me is like, I just feel super safe with you. And I don't know why that is. And for me, I realize is because like the thing I wanted most in life is to feel safe. So
Yeah.
I just cultivate that place for myself because I want it and need it.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. Well, there's definitely a need for this level of leadership work and business work, and I'm optimistic that this is going to trickle out into other areas. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Oh, there was something that you said, I think, in one of your recent posts, um, where you said, like, I spent the first 3 years of my marriage in agony, and that just like hit every piece of hit every piece of me, and I think
Oh, you're talking. I'm like, who are you talking about? You're talking about me.
yeah,
Funny, I actually just dissociated myself. I'm like, oh, because I was happy with Seth, but it was the physical pain I was in that you were.
yeah,
That's so
yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Yes, yes, I
yeah,
was in agony, physical agony. Yeah.
yeah. For me, it was emotional agony, but it was emotional agony from like my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize how long I had been carrying that with me, and I'm still moving through some of it. As we mentioned before we started the recording, like now I'm starting to have memories come up, and it's some of them are really wonderful, and others I'm like, oh yeah, I was tormented when I was a little kid.
Uh,
And to not actually like acknowledge that and let that out, um, I didn't have the capacity to do it. And then going through the work in SBSM, I realized, oh yeah, I've built a lot of capacity because now I'm at least able to acknowledge it and be with it, and I'm not trying to push it away. And so to make space for that part of my experience too,
yeah.
it's complicated. It's complicated because you're like relating to these other human beings, and it's 30 some odd years later, and you're like, wait, but why am I still holding on to this?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because it just never completed, right?
Yeah.
And I think as people are listening and going through your work or making the decision to go through your work, um, like this is a long game
Yeah.
process. It's not just, oh yeah, we're gonna move through everything in these 12 weeks and
I wish it were that easy. I really did. I do. I wish it was that easy. Um,
yeah,
but that's good. That's good intel because it kind of goes back to what we said earlier that until the capacity and the foundation is really there, these older wounds that we might not even have any memories of, they will not come up until the capacity is there for you to handle them and have the support, if you will, and the safety in your environment for them. It's just tremendous when we really think how much children survive and move through, even in a good family system. You know, the societal conditionings and just culture and rules are really ingrained. I think we're starting to see that come up and out more, but yeah, that's a really important one.
as my work is expanding, I'm now realizing like I need more help. And to be able to receive help feels like such a new experience. Like there's a part of me that fights it,
Yeah.
and then there's another part of me that realizes um, hyper independence was part
Your
of my
thing.
survival. It's just what
Yeah.
I needed to do.
Yep.
And so to work through that piece and then to actually like lovingly receive the help without any kind of attachment or expectation feels really weird, but it feels really nice. Of like, oh, okay, I don't have to do this alone.
Right. Is that help within your business or like personal life? Yeah.
All of it,
Uh-huh.
all of it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember this was years ago, but hiring a cleaner for our house was like agonizing for me because I actually really enjoy cleaning. I'm
Hmm.
very good at it because that's what I grew up doing as a kid for my parents at the animal hospital. So there's a little of that too, but it was hard and like, oh, this is so privileged. And it's like, no, you work hard. You can't do all of these things. It's not like I'm not going to clean our dishes and clean the toilet if it needs to be cleaned, but
Yeah.
just that help every couple of weeks is now I just love it. But it took some time to not feel guilty
Hmm.
around that, you
Yeah.
know. Um, because in the end, back in the day, there'd be a lot more people living in a home to help and contribute to that. And it's just me and my husband, and we're working, often 50 hours a week. So there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
So that's an important one. I would say that it also puts us into that deserving
Hmm.
element that we do deserve to be helped and have support. And it looks different. Again, it's going to look different in each person's world, right? It might
Yeah.
be having groceries delivered, it might be a house cleaner, it might be having someone help you walk your dog, all those sorts of things.
Yeah. The goodness conversation is one that plays a lot in my head. It's like, okay, is this attached to to receiving goodness, whether it be my health, in my
Yeah.
relationships, in my business,
Hmm.
and building building my capacity for more goodness has been an interesting reframe because I realize it's been like
It's been tiny.
that. It's been tiny.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been really, really tiny.
That's so good. That's so good. Um, I'm going to ask you one final thing, and that is if people want to work with you, are you in the midst of taking on new people? How is your style
Yeah.
of bringing on clients and all that right now?
Yeah, I am taking on new clients. So there's two primary ways they can work with me. They can work with me in a 3.5 hour intensive, one time intensive. And that is right now I have 5 or 6 slots available for that. And then I'm taking on 3 new clients for my longer container, which is the well rested, well paid leader. And that
Mm,
is a 6 month container.
good title. The
Yeah.
well rested, well paid leader.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
That came
Donnie,
out of
so
the
good.
work with SBSM.
Yeah. So any final wishes to all humans that are finding this video of ours, whether it's now in the year 2022 when we're recording it or later for again, we're sort of framing this in terms of smart body, smart mind, and the nervous system work and how that can help someone's development personally but
Yeah.
professionally. But what's your like wish for those watching and just maybe coming across this work or wondering if they should dive deeper?
My wish would be like my audacious wish is for
Hmm.
everybody to go through SBSM. Like it would be a very different planet. My like wish right now
Hmm.
is that people begin just to do it gradually. Start with a video. Start with your healing trauma series.
Hmm.
You have so many wonderful free resources on your YouTube channel. Like honestly, that's where I spend a lot of my time. Even to to this day, before we started,
Yeah.
I was watching one of your long form lectures, and I
Cool.
sometimes when I go for my walk, I'll just listen to them for a whole bunch of reasons. But
Yeah.
I I can't like tell people just how much SBSM and 21 Day um, have changed my life,
Hmm.
and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the work. I'm grateful for your genius to bring Kathy and Peter and Moshi Feldenkrais' work together, because
It's powerful stuff.
it is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Mr. Hill.
Yeah, you are welcome. Thank you.